let's stay then with the budget speech. Job creation was high on that list of priorities. The budget also providing immediate support for creating jobs with 24.8 billion rand allocated to that, including labor affairs. We're joined now by Wandile Ngcaweni, who is a political economy researcher at Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, and Network Mobiliser at Youth Capital, Lethiwe, Nkosi. Good evening to both of you, and thanks for your time. Lethiwe, let me begin with you. Jobs have been such a big issue for young people. Your reflections then to that, your reaction rather, to that budget speech.
Thank you, Kathy. I think overall, the budget speech did acknowledge the fact that opportunities are needed by young people, job opportunities are needed by young people. So we welcome the allocation to public employment programs. However, the question still remains, are we creating opportunities that will really allow young people to remain employed for a long term, or are these opportunities simply just, to tick off the box to say that we've given young people opportunities, but are these opportunities meaningful? So a lot needs to be done, a lot of thinking needs to be applied when it comes to the job opportunities created for young people. Are they sustainable job opportunities? It really is a matter to see what opportunities will give young people, and my challenge to government would be to really think about allocating enough funding to ensure that the opportunities are indeed meaningful.
Wandile, when I listen at least to some of the commentators that we've had on this channel already, it's not lost on them that this speech takes place in a time where, in 2 years we're going to be heading towards the election. So there are, of course, those economic efficiency considerations to take into account, but there also seems to be a management of the political expectations and some decisions that will perhaps gain some leverage on that score as well.
Definitely, Kathy. The minister announced that GDP growth will be at about 1.8%. Now, going into an election year for the ANC and other political implications after COVID, this is not enough. I mean, in past decades, around 2008, back to the question you were asking, Lethiwe, projected growth was 5%, yet employment initiatives failed to create jobs. So going into a year where they are expecting 1.8%, it is highly unlikely that they will create enough jobs for the economy. The monies that have been put towards employment initiatives is very good. However, it remains to be seen how this will affect and, in fact, change the condition of young people in the real sense.
When it comes to satisfying the expectations of ordinary people, you, of course, have a lot in this budget. We can talk about the funding that has been allocated towards the education spending, specifically NSFAS for higher education. They've had a significant increase there, given the constraints they had just in the last financial year, where not enough money was allocated towards them. We have, of course, the continued spending of the social relief of distress grant. So they're all of these little things. When you look at them, Wandile, what do you think the long-term game is here?
The 32 billion allocated to NSFAS this year is not enough. It hasn't been enough for quite a long time. NSFAS continues to fail within the system to provide proper funding for students. I mean, there's more students who want to come in than there is the proper allocation. Now, on the grants issue, it is very positive that the minister announced that 44 billion would be allocated again for the 350 rand grant. However, many people were expecting to hear an announcement about an unemployment grant for young people. So currently, it's not as straight as it should be. No one is as happy as they should be. However, I guess we'll see time will tell whether the students are happy with the 32 billion that has been allocated for the year.
Lethiwe, ultimately, one of the big issues going into this budget has been that of sustainability, that whatever decisions government makes, it has to be able to see them through over the medium to long run. Are you satisfied that that will be the case, particularly where you have all of this spending that's geared towards the youth of this country?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is enough. And I say this also thinking about the allocation difference between TVET colleges versus universities. You know, when we think about what the market requires, it requires artisanal skills, and yet the funding going towards boosting the TVET system and ensuring that the infrastructure is there to ensure young people do get those qualifications and acquire the artisanal skills. If we look at that, it's not there. And so there isn't really a long-term view of, you know, the solutions needed by young people. You know, if a young person did decide to become an artisanal, because that's what the market requires, and yet there's not enough funding to support the TVET system, then we could argue that that young person has been failed. So a lot of consideration must be made into what young people are saying. I think, you know, as Youth Capital, our stance is you cannot create solutions for young people without hearing from young people. And I think if young people's input was given, or rather young people were heard, it would have been understood the need to allocate more funding to TVET education. But also, if young people were heard, then young people who have historical debt that are not able to get a certificate. So they went to university, but they did not get the certificate because of historical debt. If those young people were heard, then maybe, you know, consideration would have been made into addressing that problem. Because yes, NSFAS has received additional funding, but yet there are graduates who cannot enter the labor market because of the historical debt. So the long and short answer of it, Kathy, is no. The solutions put forward, they don't have a long-term lens, and it's really devastating when you think about what that will mean for young people.
Wandile, perhaps let me go back to you and take it to where I probably should have begun, and just get your insights in terms of the overall budget and what you make of it.
Well, I was glad about the unemployment and employment allocations. I was glad to hear about the grants allocations. I was not glad to hear about the projected GDP growth, especially because, I mean, sustained economic growth is critical to employment creation and raising the sectors that need to be raised in South Africa in order to absorb jobs and have economic growth. I was glad to hear the allocation of higher education, even though there are still many challenges that exist in the sector. I was glad again as a young person who's fairly young, who has a job, who understands the issue of tax in South Africa, and especially as a black young man. You know, the tax reliefs are very good. However, within that, I was not happy to hear that the private sector is also getting tax breaks. I mean, they bring nothing to the table in South Africa. They never, they never create the employment that they should, in fact, create. Instead, what they do is say, you know, there are structural impediments, and these structural impediments include that young people there's a skills mismatch and all manner of things. However, they never actively actually go out and fix these issues themselves in order so that they can absorb young people. So the intention is not there to absorb young people as the private sector. So I don't see why they should get tax relief. However, the ordinary person on the streets, definitely I'm glad that we will have a level of tax relief.
And Wandile Ngcaweni is with the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, and Lethiwe Nkosi is a Network Mobiliser at Youth Capital.